Our next speaker is Aminkeng Alemanji, Amin from Åbo Akademi. He will talk about anti-racism in Finland, ? He is a researcher on issues of race, racism, anti-racism, anti-racism education. He is head of social exclusion master's program and university teacher. In addition, he is a docent in sociology with specific expertise in studies in diversity. Aminkeng Alemanji researches on issues of race, racism, anti-racism and anti-racism education. His research focuses on developing different strategies of anti-racism education in and out of schools. He has also researched the ethnic profiling in Finland, as well as hate crimes in Finland. He is currently the head of program for the Masters of Social Exclusion at Åbo Akademi University. He is currently working on developing the first anti-racism mobile application in Finland. Very interesting. So please, Amin, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Annele. I'm pleased to be here. When I was invited to give this talk and I was asked to give a topic for this short presentation, I asked myself one question, and the question that I asked was, Finland is changing, and what are we doing with this, with the change that's happening in Finland? So basically, because Finland is continuously changing, what skills do we think that the future teachers of Finland need? And that's how I came to this topic, and I said, based on my research and based on what I have observed in Finland, here is an area which I think that is missing within the area of teacher education in Finland. Next slide. Yeah, when I did my research a few years ago, I was asking the question, what is anti-racism education? And I was asking the question if it exists, and if it does exist, where does it exist? And how does it exist in Finland? My supervisor was a professor in multiculturalism and interculturalism at Helsinki University. And we had this interesting discourse about how to differentiate these two important fields of work. And here was a good way to differentiate these two works. So basically, Gunilla Holmes, one of my former colleagues at Helsinki University, actually writes that multicultural education and politics in Finland basically is aimed at immigrants, and it looks into how to support their integration into the Finnish society. Now, coming from that understanding, anti-racism, on the other hand, isn't aimed at immigrants. It's aimed at the host and asking the major question, how are you a good host? How are you treating others who are in Finland? How are you treating the minorities who are in Finland? How are you treating these diverse groups? How are you working with other groups and creating space? And most importantly, what are you doing to challenge racism and systems of racism in Finland? So that's basically the focus of anti-racism, and that's what makes anti-racism education different from multicultural education. Next slide. Yeah, and throughout my research, I've come to understand, or I came to realize that a lot of times teachers in Finland were blamed or are being blamed for not being equipped to deal with issues of racism in schools. And when I did my research, the focus of my research was to understand why. And I came to understand that the reason why the teachers are being blamed for not being equipped to deal with issues of racism in school is because over 90% of teachers in Finland have never been to an anti-racism classroom. They've never been to an anti-racism course. They've never been to an anti-racism workshop. Now, if you haven't trained this group of people to deal with issues of racism, how then can you expect them to deal with these issues of racism when they go to the field and start working in different schools? So rather than blame teachers about their inability to deal with issues of racism in schools, I was actually suggesting that we have to find a way to give teachers the training that they need so that they will be able to deal with racism in schools when it happens. Remember, racism in Finland is here, it's not going anywhere. And the more we can invest in finding a way to solve and disrupt the system, the better for all of us, the better for the future of education in Finland. Now, throughout my work, uh, I've come to discover that anti-racism education exists in different forms and in different ways in Finland. For example, you can find elements of anti-racism education in multiculturalism, in multicultural and intercultural education. You can also find elements of anti-education in anti-bullying education. You can find elements of anti-education in global education, in peace education, or in inclusion and equality and diversity education and training. However, all of these different topics are not anti-racism education. Anti-racism education is anti-racism education, and there is a need to invest in creating anti-racism education because anti-racism education is primarily focused on challenging racism or all forms of racial discrimination wherever they may occur. Next slide. Now, what is anti-racism education? Basically, I define it as a progressive effort towards an anti-racist end, and this is an action-oriented effort whereby different partners who are involved are invested in action. Now, in Finland or around the world, there are three groups of people. Usually, when it comes to racism, there is the first group of people who are called the racist or who identify as racist. There's a second group who are the non-racist, and there's a third group who are the anti-racist. Now, a racist. When I did my PhD, I actually argued that being called a racist is the most dangerous word or the most dangerous thing you can do to somebody to call them a racist. Because as an educationist, I realized that when you call someone a racist or when you refer to someone or describe someone as a racist, everything stops. There is no coming back from that descriptive word racist. And because of that, there was inability for progress to happen. And as an educationist, I believed in transformation. But today, I look at the word racist very differently. Everyone can be a racist. Everyone can identify as racist. Now, how does one become a racist or how does one become an anti-racist? Now, you become a racist based on you become a racist if you are supporting a racist policy or racist action. Now, it has to do with an active participation that leads to racial inequity. Now, you become an anti-racist or you are an anti-racist if you're supporting an anti-racist action or an anti-racist policy. The most dangerous group are those who identify as non-racist, because these are the people who identify with taking the neutral space. They've opted to be neutral. But in the discourse and debate of racism, there is no neutrality. You can't be neutral because your neutrality is either supporting those who already have power. So if you choose to take a neutral stand, what happens actually is that you are giving room for more racism to occur. So you need to kind of take a stand. Either you are a racist or you are an anti-racist. Either you're working towards creating anti-racist policies or anti-racist actions, or you're working towards creating anti-race or racist policies or racist action. And within this understanding, there are three critical things that I like to focus on when it comes to education in particular. Now, a lot of teachers or a lot of people or teachers in Finland have an understanding about racism. They know that racism is bad. We all understand that racism is bad, but there is more to racism than just identifying it as being bad. Okay, so being bad doesn't make racism go in, doesn't make racism go away. Acknowledging that racism is bad it's not a solution to racism. What we need is acknowledging that racism is bad and investing in actions that actually help to eradicate racism. And in education, there are three very important things that we must do. Next slide. Now, the three most important things, which are key principles of creating an anti-racist pedagogy, are one, we must have anti-racist teachers and staff. Now, an anti-racist teacher is someone who understands that racism is bad and is invested in creating an anti-racist classroom or an anti-racist school. So you must be invested in supporting and acting towards creating an anti-racist establishment. And once we have these anti-racist teachers, once we're able to create these anti-racist teachers will then work towards creating anti-racist policies. Anti-racist policies can be either written and unwritten laws that govern schools or that guide schools. It could be curriculums, it could be different forms of pedagogy. So these are all of these aspects or constitute they are policies that inform these are policies that create anti-racist curriculum. So we need to be able to think about an anti-racist education or anti-racist pedagogy based on these three key points: anti-racist teachers, anti-racist policies, and anti-racist curriculum. These three things have to come together in order for us to have for us to have an established anti-racist platform in Finland. Now, the one question which has always bothered me is that why isn't this happening? And what's the biggest challenge for that limits us for that makes these what's there that actually makes it difficult for this to happen? Now, when I discuss with a lot of staff in Finland and a lot of teachers in Finland, one of the things that they see is that they are scared of failing because they're not sure if they know enough how to deal with these issues. And I say, I understand that it's a very scary issue. It's a very scary topic. But then I like to use the metaphor of a child. Uh, when a child is born, the child is fragile, right? The child learns to hold their neck. The child learns to sit. The child learns to stand. Then the child learns to walk. The child learns to walk, and then the child learns to run. No one is born and starts running. Okay, what makes the child learns to sit, or what makes the child learns to stand, or what makes the child learns to walk or to run is because the child is able to harness the fear that the child's motive to succeed is bigger than the child's fear to fail. So my advice to teachers is that you should be able to have a good or strong fear, a strong motive to succeed, rather than focus on your fear of failure. Because we are all learning. I do not describe myself as an anti-racist expert. I am an anti-racism student. I learn about anti-racism every single day, and I'm investing in learning about anti-racism every single day. So whenever you have this fear in you, think of this little child, and think of how the child learns, what makes the child learns to stand or makes the child learns to run. So you must develop a different attitude, and the attitude should be, what happens if I fail? And try to move beyond your fear to fail and focus on your need to succeed. Next slide. Yeah. So to conclude, I just want to point out here finally that the world in which we live in can only be as fair, as just, as equal as the knowledge upon which it's built. Now, one of the things we do within anti-racism, what anti-racism education or anti-racism forces us to do is to challenge the knowledge that we have. I remember one time I was asked by somebody of good intention, and I was asked, "How can you say that? How can you justify that whites are not the most superior race in the world? Because they are actually the first ones to send people to the moon, the first one who are in charge of the global progress or modernity is basically led by the white race." And I said, it just depends on what's the foundation of the knowledge that you have about the world. If your foundation of the knowledge that you have about the world is based on just the idea of modernity, which is white centered, then there is a problem with the knowledge system. So, what anti-racism education forces us to do is we have to be able to interrogate the knowledge system that governs us. And before I go, I think one of the things I just like to highlight here is that with anti-racism education, everyone can do anti-racism. Anti-racism is not just it's not something that is just uh, limited for people who are from a marginalized group. Everyone can do anti-racism, and everyone should invest in doing anti-racism, because anti-racism is the future. For us to solve global problems, we must build our solutions within anti-racism methods and theories. Thank you so much.